frantic nightlife in Bright Light's big city. Michael Keaton is a ghost summoned to exorcise a house of its human occupants in Beetlejuice. And the fate of the world depends on Demi Moore in the occult thriller, The Seventh Sign. It's all coming up next on Siskel and Ebert.
Down for over a week. I called your office, I called here.
Where did you get into the city?
I got here today, you saw me today, you ran away from me.
Somebody else.
Don't give me that bullshit. I left about 150 messages at your office. Then I go to your office this morning and they tell me that as of yesterday, you're no longer employed there.
Michael J. Fox plays a New Yorker who can't escape from the fast track, and it's killing him in Bright Light's Big City, one of the new movies we're going to be reviewing this week. I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune with a slightly sore throat. Our first film is Bright Light's Big City. It works only, I think, as a rather standard cautionary tale against drug use because its clean-cut star is not the kind of person we expect to see using drugs. In the movie, Michael J. Fox plays a fact-checker for a magazine modeled after the New Yorker, but he has trouble at work because he's stoned on cocaine much of the time. What's troubling him? In the beginning, we are led to believe it's his failing marriage to a pretty young model played by Phoebe Cates, whom he finally confronts at a fashion show.
Amanda! 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 I want an explanation! Amanda! I want an explanation. I want to know why.
Not making any headway with his wife, Fox spends his nights in New York's club scene, making time with an assortment of boring women, dates set up by his similarly coked-up friend played by Kiefer Sutherland.
Aren't you a writer?
Yeah, I do some writing. More of an editor, actually. Gotham magazine.
Oh, God, I've been reading it all my life. I mean, my parents get it. Well, I always read it at the gynecologist. So what's your name again? Should I know you?
There is some promise of better times provided by a blind date between Fox and his friend's cousin, nicely played by Tracy Pollan.
What did he tell you about me?
Not much.
Come on.
He said you were a cross between a young F. Scott Fitzhemingway and a later Wittgenstein.
That's it? Nothing else?
Unfortunately, that relationship is given short shrift in this movie, and surprise of surprises, we eventually learn that the real reason for Fox's funk is that he hasn't been able to properly grieve for his mother's death a year ago. It's his younger brother who confronts him with that fact.
Tomorrow's the anniversary. 1 year, in case you've forgotten. We're gonna spread her ashes in the lake, and Dad wants you to be there. Jamie? Jamie, you just forgot Mom completely, haven't you?
Don't get righteous with me.
Hey, well, you haven't seen Dad since last Christmas.
Shut up!
Don't tell me to shut
up! Shut up! Just be there! Shut up!
It takes a long, long time to get to that moment, and I must say I did feel quite manipulated by the movie in a negative way. The mother's story, though hinted at early on in the film through some little flashbacks, overtook the failed marriage story, and I felt sort of burned after having my interest aroused by the marriage, which turns out to be a false lead. Yet that did not prevent me from watching Michael J. Fox, who is quite effective here. I know he's popular because a lot of people think he's cute, but he's more than cute here. He's a solid presence, one of those outwardly stable young people you're amazed to find in distress, and it's compelling to see him play this kind of character. My review, thumbs down on the script, thumbs up on Michael J. Fox.
Well, I liked Fox very much, too, and I think I liked the movie more than you did, but I think I read it in a totally different way. I don't think this is a movie about why he uses cocaine, and the possible reasons are unhappy marriage, doesn't have a nice relationship with this woman, or doesn't grieve his mother's death. I think the movie is about the fact that he's completely addicted to cocaine and therefore can't relate to anything else in his life, and so everything is a false lead, and everything in his life is on hold until he deals with his cocaine problem, which he seems about to do at the end of the film.
Well, the only problem is we're set up to, first of all, you're right. I mean, a drug habit is a drug habit, and that ruins everything. That seems obvious to me. The way the film starts out, though, a great deal of attention is played to the relationship with the marriage.
Yeah.
And the way that turns out to be tossed away at the end of the movie, didn't that bother you at all?
That isn't how I read it. See, I thought that he finally realized that he met her at a bar, you know,
right.
And then she left him to go off to Paris.
Right.
They never had a marriage. It was all just drug fantasy.
Totally?
I think so. I don't think there's no indication in the movie that they had the slightest communication on any realistic level.
Well, there's a lot of talk about it, a lot of mourning about it. I mean,
yeah,
but
that's just, you know, he's sad because he blames all of his problems on that. But when they finally meet, there's no chemistry, there's no communication.
That surprised me.
Yeah, it's a good movie. I think probably a better movie than you did. Our next movie is named The Seventh Sign, and it's another one of those movies where all of the signs of the apocalypse are at hand. The rivers run with blood, the sea boils, the desert freezes, the birds fall from the sky, the earth shakes, and there's one scene in the movie where the television news is so bad that the only bearable program is Wheel of Fortune. Things are really bad in the world. The movie stars Demi Moore as an 8 months pregnant Los Angeles woman who rents the apartment over her garage to a mysterious stranger with haunted eyes. Who is this guy? He seems to be some kind of prophet of the end of the world.
The signs have begun. As each passes, the end draws closer.
Then why are you here?
I'm its deliverer.
That's Jürgen Prochnow as the stranger. Demi Moore begins to fear for the life of her unborn child, who somehow seems to be the key to the strange events taking place all over Earth, and she finds a bright young biblical scholar who tells her the day of reckoning is near.
Earthquakes, plagues, things like water turning to blood, all kinds of weird natural disasters. These things will happen to tell us that God's wrath is about to destroy the world.
And that's what this paper's about.
Yeah, the signs of the end.
She finds an ancient manuscript headed with the numbers 229. Does that refer to a passage in the Bible or to leap year day when her child is scheduled to be born? She has a frightened conversation with her husband about the stranger.
The first infant born without a soul, born dead, such as a soulless child must be. No, it's not. He's some kind of religious fanatic. Russell, he thinks if he can kill the baby, he'll end the world.
Of course, I was sitting there looking at that 229, which is in the same hand as the rest of the Hebraic script, and saying it's probably only referring to leap year day if they had February the 29th 3,000 years ago. Not likely. I don't think they named February until after the Romans came along. It was named after the famous Emperor Februarius.
Right. I think you should have a sore throat. What was 29th named after?
29th was named after his assistant, 29thiest, the head of the army. There were a few things I liked about this movie, and Demi Moore's performance was one of them. She has a certain gravity here, a certain strength and seriousness the material desperately needs. But The Seventh Sign is essentially a very silly movie and a very confused movie, too. It contains a lot of ambitious special effects, including a snowstorm in the desert, but the script is sort of sloppy and introduces too many mysterious and unexplained characters who float around looking serious and significant and mysterious and unexplained, until when the explanation comes at the end, it's all too simple, considering, after all, that the fate of the Earth was imbalanced. Also, now, without giving away the ending, which I would never dream of doing, I thought that they should have had, at the end, when that baby is there, he should have reached out and just touched his mother, if you see what I mean.
Well, let me tell you something. Okay. By that point, I had checked out of this film a long time ago because I thought it was quite stupid. We'd always talk about these situations. Here you are, you have a pregnant young woman. A man comes in looking like Max von Sydow, right. Death warmed over. He wants to rent the back room. I mean, no way.
And no says he doesn't have a telephone, he doesn't have a television. Right. All he has is a shortwave radio and a lot of her.
And then she goes, and then of course she's, you know, pregnant and she goes creeping. I mean, this is, come on, we call it the idiot plot. Yeah. This is an idiot plot, souped up with special effects, mumbo jumbo, worthless film to me. Demi Moore brings nothing to the film other than her pretty face.
Oh, she brings more than that. She brings a presence. She indicates to me in this movie, as she had before, that of the young actresses of her generation, she's one of the more gifted, really.
Not in this film.
Well,
she's not given anything to do.
This movie does not contain the key to her future. You're right about that. Coming up next, who are you going to call when your house is invaded by strangers? Not the Ghostbusters. This time you call for Beetlejuice.
I've seen The Exorcist about 167 times, and it keeps getting funnier every single time I see it.
It was called Beetlejuice, and to its credit, it's one of the most ambitious fantasy, horror, and comedy films ever made. But here's a case where a movie just tries too hard for its own good, overwhelming us with special effects to the point it becomes almost obnoxious. Beetlejuice is the story of a young couple who has fixed up a nice country home, but they die in a car accident. And when they return home, they discover that they're ghosts. Then the home is sold to an obnoxious couple from New York City, their daughter and their lousy decorator, and the ghosts try to scare them all away, but they can't be seen.
I'm gonna get her. So?
Once you cover up the wallpaper, knock down a few walls, this place might just be livable. What's on the 3rd floor?
Attic space.
Oh, I forgot to lock the attic door.
Did you feel something?
What to do, how to get the new people to leave. As in Ghostbusters, they must call on outside help. In this case, a wacky alien character from the netherworld named Beetlejuice, played by Michael Keaton.
All right, let's get down to business. You're right. I got a card around here somewhere. Here. Who do I have to kill? Here, hold that for me, would you? There.
Whoa!
There you go. You don't have to kill anybody. Possession. Good. Learn to throw your voice. Fool your friends. Fun and party.
A little of this guy goes a long, long way, and the back half of this movie is absolutely stuffed with his antics.
Can you be scary? What do you think of this? You like it?
There's plenty more of Beetlejuice in this movie. The film was directed by Tim Burton, the same man who directed Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and you can't fault the inventive art direction or ambition in either film. But in Beetlejuice, it's just too much of a not very good thing. I really felt the Michael Keaton character detracted from a rather nice couple played by Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin, and so the very thing that I thought I would enjoy the most, the Ghostbuster, if you will, was the thing that I enjoyed the least.
You know, I'm with you on this one, and frankly, I walked into this movie knowing nothing about it. I didn't know it was going to be a Ghostbusters clone.
Right.
And I liked that relationship between Gina Davis and Alec Baldwin. I thought it was going to be a goofy, silly comedy about this young married couple trying to fix up this crummy house. Maybe kind of a money pit or something. I don't know what I was expecting. Then when all the supernatural stuff hit, I agreed with you. I was sitting looking at the set decorations and saying, gee, that's terrific, the special effects. Boy, they're well done, but so what? Because there's no comic energy behind it, and Beetlejuice is absolutely, I mean, you use the word obnoxious. That's what it is. It's not funny. It's just, there's that guy again. Let's get rid of him, which is not what I expect to think about Michael Keaton.
No, if this were a comedy act, which is really what it is for about 40 minutes, you would walk out after 10 and say, who needs this? It's not funny.
That's right. Coming up next, Babette's Feast, one of this year's Academy Award foreign film nominees. And also coming up a little later in the show, they restored some of the original footage from the 1931 version of Frankenstein. It's from Denmark, and it's one of this year's Oscar nominees for Best Foreign Film. It's a small but wonderful treasure of a movie based on a short story by Isaac Dinesen. That's the same woman whose life and writings provided the inspiration for the movie Out of Africa. The movie tells a simple but very deep story in a spare and elegant form. The story of two sisters in Denmark who devote their lives to prayer and helping the poor, and who have always denied themselves any kind of material joy. All of the young men who once fell in love with them were rejected, but one day, many years later, one of those old suitors sends a French woman to them in Denmark. She's lost her family, this French woman. She's lost her livelihood, and now she simply seeks a humble job.
Si vous ne me prenez pas votre service, je n'ai plus qu'à mourir. Oh non, 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 non. Restez avec nous.
That's Stéphane Audran as Babette, and she serves the sisters faithfully and well until one day, 14 years later, she wins 10,000 francs in the French lottery and asks the two women for a favor.
Jeg vil alene lave festmiddagen på præstens fødselsdag.
Min kæreste Babette, vi har slet ikke til hensigt at give en middag. Nej, min søster og jeg har bare tænkt på et helt beskedent aftensmåltid med en kop kaffe bagefter.
Du ved jo, Babette, vi har aldrig budt vores gæster på andet og mere.
Jeg vil lave en fransk middag.
En fransk middag.
En fransk middag.
The feast itself turns into a war between luxury and devout restraint. The religious guests obviously enjoy the delicious food, but they restrain their praise in an attempt to appear less worldly, all except for one of the guests, an old general, who was once in love with one of the sisters.
Det här är ju Blinis Demidov. Det här är bestämt bör gå 1860.
Ja. Jeg tror bestemt, vi får sne hele dagen i morgen.
And the feast in this movie and the reaction of the people who have that feast create one of the great sensuous sequences that I can remember in recent films. Babette's Feast is a very subtle movie which begins slowly but needs to begin slowly because in order to understand the secrets at the end of the movie, we first must understand the life that these sisters lead in Denmark and how different it is from the life that Babette herself once knew in Paris. Her gesture in preparing and serving that perfect meal is the same as an artist creating a perfect work of art, and that's exactly how she herself sees it. This is one of those movies that you need to think about and talk about afterwards because the full implications of everything that happens are only apparent after the whole story has been told.
Well, it's an interesting movie because it's called Babette's Feast. It starts out, as you say, very slowly, and you're wondering, where is Babette? Where is the feast? What's it all going to mean? And I think, of course, one of the things it does come across is opportunities gained and lost. The two sisters lose opportunities. Babette is withholding her chance to show what she can do in full flower, and it really represents I suppose, an encouragement of whatever is inside of us to take advantage of what we had. Surely the sisters would have been happier if they had been less restrained in their life, and we see that in the glory of what Babette does.
You know, what I liked about this movie was, unlike most plot-driven Hollywood films in which you go from climax to climax, from character to character, from confrontation to confrontation, this is a whole story. This story is 2 hours long. It's the story of some people, and we learn about them, and we see them, and I was fascinated at every moment in the same way that one would be fascinated by listening to a good storyteller, because you don't know how the story is going to turn out.
One thing they would have done in Hollywood is they would have started with Babette as a chef in Paris. You know that they would have done that. They would have started with a cooking sequence and then tailed it away. This film does surprise you at the end. Coming up next, there's a new video version out of the 1931 classic Frankenstein movie. It contains some previously deleted scenes. We'll look at the new scenes next. One of the great horror films of all time is Frankenstein, directed by James Whale in 1931 from Mary Shelley's novel. It scared millions for more than a half-century and done so with great Gothic style. But some new footage has been discovered by Universal Pictures, and they have included it in a new video disc and videotape version. The new footage runs about 1.5 minutes, and it was probably considered too intense for the time, 1931. Let's take a look at the traditional release print of this film, the scene where the monster plays with a little girl.
I can make a boat. See how mine floats?
Now, that's how we've known the movie for 57 years. But in one of the restored new sequences, the monster does more than throw flowers in the lake.
No, you're hurting me! No!
Obviously, he doesn't know what he's doing. The sweet guy just wants to see if she'll float like the little flowers. And it is kind of sweet. But I guess they were a little bit worried about that at that time, which is sort of strange because 1931 is pre-code, and yet they pulled that sequence out. And you go right to the peasants dancing in the town. I can see why that scene was removed, although it's perversely charming now to see it. So if you plan on renting Frankenstein, make sure you find the new restored version. It's even more of the classic it has always been.
Well, I enjoyed the restored version, and I enjoyed him throwing the girl into the lake, but I have to ask you something.
Sure.
Isn't this an issue that gets into the same region as colorization? In other words, I don't have anything against movies that are restored when the director was against the original cuts. For example, the restoration of the missing scenes in A Star Is Born, which George Cukor wanted in the film.
Right.
But is there any evidence that Universal took this out and James Whale wanted it in?
My intuition,
maybe it was simply a cut at the time.
No, my intuition is probably James Whale had enough sense of irony in this film and intelligence as a filmmaker to want to put the sequence in. If he shot it, my assumption, and it's just an assumption, would be that the studio would say, hey, let's take this out. It's a little heavy-handed.
Oh, well, then if that's the case, it's okay with me. But here's the question. There are a lot of so-called restored versions of movies coming out now, and that's one of the ways they're trying to sell discs and tapes is to say, hey, it has missing footage. Don't you feel that putting in so-called missing footage is just as bad as colorization unless you can prove that it's part of the original vision of the director?
Well, no, I don't think it's as bad. I think it's better if it's the director wanted it that way. I think it's sort of interesting historically as an add-on to say, here's some of the stuff that was let out. I'm so interested in good movies, I'd like to see all of the takes that were never seen.
Yeah, but why couldn't they put these missing scenes on at the end so you could look at them
That's what I just said. Put them on at the end.
Good idea. Now let's recap the movies that we've reviewed on this week's show. We both admired Michael J. Fox's performance in Bright Lights, Big City, but we disagreed on the script. My thumb up, Gene's thumb down. 2 thumbs down for The Seventh Sign, the supernatural thriller with Demi Moore standing between the world and the apocalypse. 2 more thumbs down for Beetlejuice, the ambitious but obnoxious Ghostbusters clone starring Michael Keaton. And finally, 2 thumbs up for the elegant and fascinating Oscar nominee Babette's Feast. So I like Bright Lights, Big City more than you did. We both like Babette's Feast.
And we both like Michael J. Fox's performance. That's it for this week. Next time, we'll be back with the reviews of more new movies, including George Burns, whose spirit inhabits his young grandson in 18 Again, and Sean Penn and Robert Duvall play violent Los Angeles police detectives trying to battle gangs in the drama Colors. That's next week. And until then, I hope my voice comes back and the balcony is closed.